drone fans, Rick here again from Drone Valley. So today's clip's on a company called Verifly. Now I mentioned these guys on my vlog a couple of weeks ago, and I just got a ton of questions and interest about them. A lot of questions on the YouTube channel, like, are these guys for real? Is this insurance real? How does it compare to a standard policy? Is it complicated? How expensive is it? So there were a million questions that I thought, rather than me try to answer them individually on the YouTube channel, I would just throw together a clip and give you the basics. Plus I want to give you my impression on it because I've been playing with the software for the last couple of weeks, and I think it's fantastic. I think what you have here is a brilliant team that has put together an application on the front end that is back-ended by a traditional insurance company. Because one of the challenges you have when you're a first-time droner or you're just getting into commercial droning is the expense of insurance. It can be an incredibly burdensome cost to get insurance for a year, and you don't know how much you're going to fly. So if you go to an insurance company, a traditional insurance company, they're not really equipped to do drone insurance because the market is so new, they don't really know how to price it correctly. So they're going to ask you a million questions about where do you fly and how experienced are you? You're going to be flying near people or near restricted areas, and how often do you think you're going to fly? Those are hard questions to answer because you don't know what the business is going to present you with. So what Verifly does is it gives you what I'll call hyper-local insurance for short bursts of time. So the application knows exactly where you're standing, builds a policy based on the dangers in that area, and sells you the coverage for 1 hour that's backed with an official insurance policy from a noted insurance company. These guys are gigantic. It's Global Aerospace that's actually backing this policy up. So I think the marriage of that internet savvy application with the traditional back-end insurance is just the perfect marriage of those two technologies, if you will, or those two front-end and back-end systems. So what Verifly does is, again, it's hyper-local because it knows from GPS coordinates exactly where you're standing, and really with 2 taps you're insured. So it couldn't have been a simpler application to actually use as an operator. And what it does is give you everything you would normally get with a traditional insurance policy, but it does it all digitally, which is perfect because if you're working with a client, they may ask you for proof of insurance before they let you fly. You can show them right on the phone. You can email them a copy of that, and you can even add them as a secondary on the insurance policy, which a lot of the clients nowadays are asking for. So at the outset, I love the product. I think it's a fantastic product, and I think what it does is give the little guy a chance to get into the business and sort of test it out to see how much work they're going to do. And obviously if you start doing a large volume of work, then you can move to a traditional insurance company if you want to. But I like the ability of buying this per job. I can add it into the cost of what I'm charging the client, and it's almost the cost of doing business for me. So I really like the flexibility of it. All right, so what do you get? Out of the top, 2 taps and you're insured. Couldn't be cooler, right? Simpler type of application. I've never seen one, so this is pretty nice. The second thing is it'll insure any drone under 15 pounds, which covers all the standard drones that are out there today. So if you're flying DJI, Unique, you're flying, GoPro's product, you're flying the Karma or the new Mavic that's coming from DJI, all that stuff is covered at this point. So the only thing it really doesn't cover the larger, heavier commercial drones. And for that, I would suggest if you're flying that kind of drone and made that kind of investment, probably traditional insurance policy because you're doing a lot of work to justify the cost of that. You get $1 million worth of coverage for up to an hour, and you can fly a quarter of a mile from your physical location. So it gives you a really wide coverage bubble for that $1 million, and it covers everything you'd expect it to cover. So it covers property damage, personal injury. So if that drone crashes into a house or heaven forbid hits a person, you've got $1 million worth of policy coverage to take care of those incidents if it happens. It's not going to happen often, but if it does happen, you need that insurance behind it. Another thing they provide, which I think is really cool, is a lot of states nowadays are talking about this accidental invasion of privacy, which means you're flying a drone near people that are having a problem with it, and they're going to come after you. They're going to say, you invaded my privacy, and you've got insurance to cover that up to $10,000. I think it's a really rare thing that that's going to occur, but for me, when I'm talking to a client, I want to seem as professional as possible with that client. So I mention that every time. I say, in addition to the $1 million policy, I also have a $10,000 policy that covers accidental invasion of privacy. Never been called on it, never had a client really say anything other than, boy, that's really neat. I've never heard that before from other people that I work with. So maybe you can use that to your advantage. So people ask, how hard is this thing to actually use? So I'll walk through the application with you, and I'll put a couple of screens up now so you can see what happens there. So the first thing you need to do is download the application. I mentioned below that I've got a link there where you can download the app for Android and for Apple. So do that first. Once you open the application, the first thing you'll see on that main screen is you standing there and a bubble of coverage around you. And if the bubble's green, that means you're flying in an area where there's very few risks and very low restrictions, and you'll have an immediate price of what it'll cost you to fly in that area. If you're flying in an area that's restricted, the app will warn you. And it may actually charge you more if you're flying close to a restricted area because there's a bigger risk for the insurance company that's insuring your drone in that area. Once you see that price, if you decide you want to buy that insurance, you tap the Get Insured button, And then once you are happy with the policy, you can then tap the Begin Insurance button. Once you hit the Begin Insurance button, you'll see the 60 minutes starting to count down, which means you're flying during that period. So don't hit that button until you're ready to put the quad up in the air. Once you hit that button, you can see exactly how much time you've got left. You can see how far you can fly within that bubble. And what I like an awful lot about it too is that you actually get a map of the area you're in, so a satellite map of exactly where you're flying to show you where the limits of that coverage is. In addition to that, it keeps a history of all the flights that you've taken and all the policies that you've bought. So if you have an insurance agent, or I should say a real estate agent that you've done work for in the last couple of weeks, and they lost the email and need another copy of the policy, you can send that to them. You can also send proof of insurance to the client right at the point of buying the insurance. So if you're standing there in front of them, when you hit that Begin Insurance or Get Insured button, you'll actually present them with a document that shows them that you're insured for that particular location, which is really comforting to them. Most of them won't make a big deal out of it, but it's a mandatory thing, or it's becoming a mandatory thing with anybody operating drones commercially, where the client will ask you for that type of proof of insurance before they'll ever let you put a bird up around their location. So make sure you can show them that. And that's really all there is to it. So I think as an application, it's incredibly complete. And again, just to go over the highlights of it, as long as you stay under 400 feet, you're fine. If you're flying a drone under the rules of Part 107 or even recreationally, you're not allowed to go above 400 feet anyway. So just play by the rules and you'll be fine. Up to 15 pounds, the drone is pretty much any drone that's out there today is under the 15-pound limit, so that shouldn't be an issue for you. You can fly with this insurance for both commercial use and recreational use. So I would strongly suggest if you're flying commercial, you can't fly without insurance. And I've said this time and again, even though you could get by without flying commercially or get by without insurance flying commercially, don't do it. The risks to you are too great to fly that thing commercially without insurance. And this application, for a very small amount of money, gives you the coverage you need to protect you in those commercial environments. The last thing I'll talk about is maybe what's coming next, because a lot of people have asked the company, and I've spoken to them a few times, they've asked the company, what if I want to buy more than an hour? What if the shoot's going to take me 2 hours to do or 3 hours to do? So some of the coming attractions for the application and future revisions of it will be that you can buy insurance for larger chunks of time. So maybe you want to buy 2 hours or 3 hours, all the way up to 8 hours of coverage, which is really nice if you've got a long, complicated shoot that you want to cover. The other thing they're going to do is expand the coverage area. So right now it's a 1/4 mile in any direction. They're going to expand that to 1/2 mile in any direction. So it gives you a much bigger coverage area. If you're flying over an area that you have to go farther out, obviously the larger the bubble, the better the coverage for you. So look for that. And then the last thing is they're going to increase the actual premium, or I should say the actual coverage, from $1 million to $2.5 million. Now, most agents I work with don't ask me anything more than $1 million. $1 million is more for them. But having that $2.5 million policy, in addition to the 10,000 accidental invasion of privacy policy, really is a difference between me and a lot of other operators they work with. When I talk to an agent and start talking to them specifically about using me for particular jobs, I stress those kind of things because I want them to know that I take this business seriously. And sometimes they'll look at that and say, you know what, I had another guy in mind, but you seem to be a lot more serious about this because your insurance policy is a lot more complete than the other guys, is. So this is just something to keep in mind when you talk to those agents. Anyway, to wrap this up, I really feel that Verifly has done a fantastic job of marrying the internet age with old school traditional insurance and made it exciting and easy to use. So for me, the recommendation is 2 thumbs up on this. If you're just starting out in the business and you need insurance on a Saturday afternoon when you're going out to do a job, there's no paperwork to fill out, there's no complicated conversations to have. 2 taps on your phone, you've got the insurance you need, and you can fly for that hour. So give it a look. Again, I've got a link below. Check it out. I like it an awful lot. I use it when I fly, and I suggest you guys give it a shot as well. If you have any questions, please drop them below. I'll get back to you. And thanks an awful lot for watching. I hope it's been helpful. Happy droning.